Hey everyone! So this video is going to be about the new RSI ship that was just announced, the Perseus. I wanted to make this video to follow up on my video from earlier, where I went through what role I thought the ship would fill, and how I thought it would stack up against the other corvettes that we know about, and go over any changes in my thoughts based on the information that we now have. I know I did say earlier that I was going to wait for the answers to the Q&A before I did this video, but I forgot that the word soon in the announcement meant in CIG time, so I mistakenly thought that those would be out in a day or two instead of a week or two. So I might make a follow-up to this video if there's any major changes that come out of that Q&A, but for now I'm just going to do this based on the info we have for now. And we do have quite a bit of information because we have a whole web page and the brochure that comes along with these concept ships. So to start off, I just want to summarize what CIG intends to be the role of this ship and all of the information that they gave us about it. Most of this information I got from the webpage they made on the ship, as well as the PDF brochure about the ship, and if you want to check that out for yourself, I have it linked in the description. It's actually pretty interesting, and if you're interested in the ship, I'd recommend you give it a read anyway, because it's well done as always. So the ship is actually pretty small, and it's actually smaller than I expected it to be. It's shorter in length than even the Hammerhead at exactly 100 meters, where the Hammerhead is 112 meters. Now it's not in production, so this number will probably change slightly once they get it actually closer to being released and figure out how all the stuff's going to actually fit inside of it, but it's not going to change by a lot probably, so it'll still be this pretty small size for a Corvette. With this somewhat small size though, you'd expect it to be pretty fast. However, the website lists an SCM speed of 92, which is quite slow. Even the Hammerhead is faster than that, with at least visually much smaller thrusters and a bigger overall size. So hopefully they just listed the wrong speed, or maybe they forgot to put a 1 in front of it, or something like that. But yeah, as always with stats at this point in development, things are likely to change, and I hope that's one of the things that does change. So going over the weaponry, the Perseus focuses on its 2 large turrets, and these 2 large turrets have twin size 7 weapons each, and they're man turrets. And then the smaller anti-fighter turrets are remote turrets, and they have twin size 3 mounts. An addition that I did not expect was the inclusion of missiles. So the Perseus actually has 20 size 5, I'll call them missiles even though they're technically torpedoes, and these are actually going to be pretty useful to have on this ship. In the speculation video I did a few days ago, one of the things that I was worried about with this ship was the lack of point defenses to help deal with fighters and bombers and defend this ship from those smaller craft. So while it's still definitely lacking in that department, these missiles will definitely help deter those smaller craft, and until it runs out of those, it'll really help keep those smaller craft at bay and make them think twice about engaging this ship. So moving on from weapons, I just wanted to go over the internal layout that they've given us because they actually included some pretty detailed cross sections. So here on the bottom deck, there's not a whole lot. There's a loading elevator in the middle, and they have the space listed as capable of holding an Ursa rover or around 50 SU of cargo. And it'll probably be you either hold that rover or you hold that cargo. You might be able to fit some cargo in there with the rover, but it'll probably not be anywhere near 50 SU at that point. Also, this level has access to the underside main turret, which is manned, so you'll have to be down here to fire it, and that's one of the main turrets with the size 4 guns. And then also on this level we have the docking collar. So here's an exterior view of the docking collar, and I guess that's all that the strange looking side flaps were after all. I was kind of hoping for something a bit more exciting. I had watched some other people's speculation videos and I saw some people with a good idea that it might be bombs or something like that, but a docking collar isn't a bad inclusion, and it'll be useful to have. It'll make it so that the ship is able to dock with stations just like a larger ship would, but still have the flexibility of being able to land. So once we know more about docking, I think this will probably be a pretty useful inclusion to have on this ship. So now moving on to the middle deck of this ship, this is pretty much the main deck on this ship. So all the way at the front is where you're going to access the topside main turret, and then slightly behind that is the torpedo bay, so I'm guessing that holds all 20 of those size 5 torpedoes, as well as the launcher tubes that they're deployed from. And then it looks like the front and back of this deck are connected by a catwalk across the cargo bay, which I think is a pretty cool design feature, and it'll help make the ship feel a bit more spacious, because that means you'll have a 2-level empty space in the middle of the ship, instead of just a bunch of small rooms. So in the back of this middle deck are most of the living quarters and amenities, and specifically they list it having separate crew and captain's quarters, as well as a mess hall. And then for the last part of the ship, we have the upper deck, which is basically just the bridge. So the bridge is probably where you'll have those seats for the remote turrets, as well as obviously the captain's seat, and then also on this level just behind the bridge are the escape pods. So you better be a fast runner if you're in that lower turret though and you need to get off the ship. That might be a pretty long run in an emergency situation. And then behind the escape pods is the engineering area, and I think that's also being shown in this concept art here, and I believe that'll probably be where you have access to some of the components and be able to do other engineering sort of tasks like redirecting power and diagnosing ship systems. So with all that new information, I do have a slightly different opinion on this ship now. So in terms of its role, which is really just to engage other Corvette-class ships or ships around that size range and smaller, I think it's pretty well suited for the job. Hopefully when it's actually in game, it'll actually be pretty nimble since it's only around 100 meters, and it would be a shame if they made it that small but it's still very slow and lumbering. But having 4 size 7 weapons at that size is quite a lot of firepower. And also the combination of those 2-point defense turrets and the missiles should help keep it safe, at least for a little bit, from smaller bombers and fighters. But I still think this ship would work better with escorting craft because it definitely could still be overwhelmed if there are a lot of smaller ships attacking it. The way I think of this ship though is it's basically the Hammerhead, but instead of being designed to stomp on fighters, it's designed to stomp on ships that are just a bit bigger than that. So basically anything that can't move fast enough to avoid those massive turrets is in danger of this ship. Now it's not designed to really take on ships that are bigger than it, like Idrises and Javelins, and it says that in the brochure, but I think to ships up to other Corvette-sized ships, this thing will be pretty dangerous, and a group of them would be even more so. Even one of the concept images shows this ship blasting through a Hammerhead, and I think that's what this ship's strong suit will be. It's a lot of firepower in a pretty small ship, and it'll likely not have too massive of a crew requirement. Depending on how worried you are about having those smaller remote turrets manned, you could probably get away with only having 3 to 5 people in one of these, which is a lot of firepower for a group that small. It wouldn't be optimal to run the ship like that, but you could probably make it work, especially if you're in a bigger fleet and you only care about having those massive turrets online, and you have other craft supporting you to help screen for fighters and bombers. So far I've been comparing this ship to the Hammerhead and the strengths of those ships. However, both of them also share a lot of weaknesses. Mainly I'm just talking about how one-dimensional they are as ships. They can do their job and be a big threat to the ships that are the size that they're meant to deal with, so fighters in the case of the Hammerhead and slightly bigger ships in the case of the Perseus, but they can't really do that much beyond that. Compared to something like the Polaris, these ships just aren't that flexible. They have space for the crew to eat and sleep and a bit of storage, but that's about it. Compared to the hangar, large cargo hold, medbay, and other features I'm forgetting on the Polaris, these ships seem pretty bare bones. So overall, I'm a bit disappointed with the Perseus, but not because it's a bad ship, it's just because it didn't have all the capabilities that I wish it had to compete with the Polaris. So even though I like the design of the ship, and especially that bridge, I still think the Polaris is my favorite Corvette, and it's definitely my favorite Corvette from a practical standpoint. Until something else comes around that can be used as a mobile base, I think it'll stay that way. Before we knew what features the Perseus was going to have, I was ready to compromise that hangar on the Polaris just to have the aesthetics of that top-mounted bridge on the Perseus as long as it had something like a medbay, because I think that'll be very important, especially as CIG starts to implement more medical gameplay and things like Death of a Spaceman. But since it doesn't seem to have anything besides the bare bones amenities you need to keep your crew running, I just don't think it's the ship for me. Let me know what you guys think about the Perseus though, now that we know more about it. Maybe its laser focus on combat is exactly what you want, so it's a perfect ship for you, and I could definitely see that. Especially if you're just trying to fill a specific role in a fleet, this ship could be very good in doing that. I want to hear your thoughts. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.